Hi, my name is Temetra, and I'm doing my topic on the vegetarian diet. And my main claim is that switching to a vegetarian diet improves the wellness of America. I'd like to start by opening up with a quote from Mahatma Gandhi, who said, "The greatness of a nation and its moral progress can be judged by the way its animals are treated." So my first point is that the American diet can be improved. It increases their health. One, by it lowers the incidence of chronic diseases. By these two that are major in the United States are heart disease and diabetes. Heart disease is the #1 health problem in the United States, and most heart disease is diet-related, caused by animal products. Studies by the American Journal of Epidemiology concluded among 29,000 participants, those who ate meat were at the greatest risk for heart disease. And vegetarians who eat their protein from vegetables, sources like tofu, legumes, and nuts, had a risk of 30% 30% risk of having a heart disease, lower than that of meat eaters, and 2.5 times fewer they have cardiac issues like heart attacks and strokes. When it comes to diabetes, the National Institute of Health and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention agree that adopting a vegetarian diet improves the health of diabetes by eating more vegetables, beans, and whole grains. My second point from this is meat has elevated levels of problematic nutrients such as cholesterol and saturated fat. Cholesterol comes from meat and dairy products, and for every 1% increase in the amount of cholesterol, you have 2% increase in heart attacks. And people with a dietary cholesterol of 150 or higher have a chance of getting atherosclerosis, which is the clogging of your arteries due to fat and cholesterol. The average U.S. citizen who eats meat has a blood cholesterol of 210, while the average vegetarian has a blood cholesterol of 161. Another study shows that 14% of vegetarians have a lower blood cholesterol than meat eaters. When it comes to saturated fat, vegetarians get less saturated fats, which means they have a reduced risk of getting heart disease. Also, a vegetarian diet promotes healthier weight management. Researchers have found that people who are overweight consume about the same amount of calories as a vegetarian, but not the same types of foods. So animal products have much more fat than plant-based foods do. Meat eaters have 3 times the obesity rate of vegetarians. And also, if you're a vegetarian, you're 10 to 20 pounds lighter than meat eaters. So ladies, that means 2 to 4 dress sizes. I'm just saying. Also, my second point is by eating a vegetarian diet, the Americans have better eating habits. You have increased consumption of nutritious foods like legumes, whole grains, vegetables, which also gives you more fiber, vitamins, and minerals. And secondly, vegetarians consume more non-vital nutrients, which are phytochemicals and antioxidants. And phytochemicals are special compounds found in plants. They have protective effects towards the human body. They detoxify carcinogens, and they help fight cancer. And antioxidants found in many of the plant products, or many of the plant-based things, they have the ability to reduce your risk of heart disease, and they also protect from oxidative damage. My third point is that having a vegetarian diet also improves environmental issues. One, growing vegetables uses less water and land. We have a growing world shortage of fresh water. It takes 100 times more water to produce 1 pound of beef than it takes to produce 1 pound of wheat. And trees are being cleared for cattle raising and crops for cattle feed. And 260 million acres of forest in the United States is cleared to maintain a meat eater's diet. it takes 3.25 acres to supply one meat eater for 1 year. It takes 1/6 the acre to feed a vegetarian for a whole year. And plants yield 10 times more protein than an acre than meat does. Farmlands containing cattle as soft land resources. Cows contribute to global warming due to the amount of fossil fuel that they produce, and it takes 3 times more fuel to produce a meat eater's diet than a vegetarian diet. Animal waste also pollutes the ecosystem. Gallons of urine and feces from animals travel down to the sea and thereby polluting the ecosystem of the rivers and seas. So to conclude, I'd like to say a quote from Leo Tolstoy. A man can live and be healthy without killing animals for food. Therefore, if he eats meat, he participates in taking animal life merely for the sake of his appetite, and to act so is immoral. Thank you.
Right. The propositions clearly identified. Your opening quote and your closing quote both deal with value issues as opposed to the factual issues about the benefits. On the second point in particular, I thought that there was a lot of argument about the benefits of vegetables, which is not necessarily demonstrated as a consequence of cutting out the meat. In other words, we got all these antioxidants and nutrition things and so on and so forth, but is it required to cut out meat to get those benefits? I didn't think that that was clearly developed. On your first point, I think you did a pretty good job developing the relationship between meat consumption and a variety of diseases. You've got some good statistical relationships that you provided documentation on and sources on. On the third point, you had a whole bunch of statistical information about environmental effects and the amount of water produced and so on and so forth, but we didn't get any source citations on that. And we need a little bit more context to talk about how significant an impact it is. That you use a lot of water might be true, but the relative shortages of water or that the disproportionate use of water is problematic, I think, is largely assumed instead of being demonstrated. I thought that you did a nice job, especially, like I said, on the first point, making your generalization. The second point, there's probably good argument in there that suggests that taking the meat out is going to contribute to that, but that needs to be developed a little bit more. You need to look at the audience a little bit more. You felt a little like you were rushing. Let's see, and there was something else. Oh, and on the first point on the saturated fats, I needed a little bit more explanation. Are all saturated fats animal-based? That's something that I think you need the source to be cited on more clearly. All right, thank you.